Have you ever just stopped and thought about how we humans organize ourselves? I mean, it's pretty incredible when you think about it. We go from the smallest little family unit all the way up to these massive, sprawling global systems. In this explainer, we're going to trace that entire journey, from the very first family to the global boardroom, to really get under the hood of how our world works. So let's dive in. You know, this quote is the perfect way to kick things off. What it's really saying is, if you want to understand people, you have to understand the groups we belong to. Society isn't just some background scenery for our lives. It's the very thing that shapes how we act, what we believe, and who we become. All right, so here's the game plan. We're going to start at the very beginning with the first social groups. Then we'll look at how those small groups ballooned into what we call society. From there, we'll dig into the systems we created to govern ourselves and to make all the stuff we need. And finally, we'll take a peek at what might be coming next. Okay, let's start at square one. The absolute most basic building block of any human organization is the family. It's the first social circle any of us ever have. But how do you go from that to something bigger? Well, that's where the clan comes into the picture. So there was the sociologist G.P. Murdoch who looked at hundreds of different societies, and he found that the family, everywhere, basically does four crucial jobs. It sets the rules for sexual relationships, it's how we make new humans, it's our first economic team, and maybe most importantly, it's our first school. It teaches us the rules of the world. It's pretty much the blueprint for everything else. So what happens when families need to team up for things like protection or big projects? The next step up is the clan. And the key thing to get here is this idea of unilineal descent. A clan traces its roots back to one single ancestor. But, and this is important, only through one side of the family, either the mom's side or the dad's. This makes it super clear who's in and who's out. And this diagram, it just lays it all out perfectly. You see, you've got a few extended families who all know they share a common grandparent or great-grandparent. That's a lineage. Then you bundle a few of those lineages together and they all claim to come from some more distant, maybe even mythical ancestor. And boom, you've got a clan. It's a really smart way to build a super strong bond in a much, much bigger group. Okay, so we've got families, clans, and tribes, all built on who you're related to. But, you know, that can only take you so far. How did we make the jump from those small groups to these huge, complicated places we call society, where you're dealing with total strangers all day, every day? That's the next giant leap in our story. So the word society actually comes from the Latin for companionship, which is kind of nice. But for sociologists, it's way more specific. A society isn't just a bunch of people living in the same area. It's the invisible web of social relationships that ties everyone together. It's all about how we connect, not just that we're all in the same place. Okay, this is where it gets really fascinating. How did this whole society thing even start? Well, people have come up with a few big ideas. The divine origin theory basically says, hey, God made it. The force theory is a bit more, well, brutal. It says society started when strong groups conquered weaker ones. And then there's the social contract idea, which suggests that at some point, we all just kind of agreed to give up some freedom to create a society for safety and order. Right. And another way to think about this is that societies evolve over time. As you can see here, they tend to move through these different stages, and each stage is really defined by how we get our food and make our stuff. You know, from hunting and gathering, to raising animals, to planting crops, and then eventually to factories and now, well, information and technology. Each step required us to get more organized. So, once you get a whole bunch of people living together, you've got a problem. How do you make decisions? Who settles fights? Who keeps things from falling apart? This is where political systems, or governments, come in. And that's the big question, right? Who gets to be in charge, and why? So, when you boil it down, there are a few main ways to answer that question. You've got democracy, where the people hold the power. Monarchy, where power is handed down in a family. Authoritarianism, where one person or a small group calls all the shots. Aristocracy is ruled by the best people, usually the rich and powerful. And a theocracy is where religious leaders are in charge. You've probably heard this quote from Lincoln, and man, it just nails the idea of democracy. The power, ultimately, comes from the people. We govern ourselves, either by voting on every single issue directly, or, more commonly, by electing people to represent us and make those decisions. Now, when you hear monarchy, you might picture a king with absolute power, right? And historically, that was often the case. They had immense power, sometimes even claiming God wanted them to rule. But over time, a lot of them turned into constitutional monarchies. That's where the royal family is more of a symbol, a figurehead, while the real power is within an elected government. And then you have the complete opposite end of the scale, authoritarianism. This is where power is held tight by a leader or a small group, and the public doesn't get a say. Dissent is not welcome. But totalitarianism, well, that's authoritarianism on steroids. It doesn't just want to control politics, it wants to control everything. What you read, what you say, even what you think. All right, so we've talked about how we group up and who's in charge. But what about all the stuff? How do we organize work, create wealth, and decide who gets what? Let's talk about economic systems. You know, throughout history, we've tried all sorts of economic systems. But today, the one that really, truly shapes our entire world is capitalism. So if you want to understand the world we live in, you have to get capitalism. Okay, so the thing about capitalism is that it's this huge balancing act. On the one hand, it's an incredible engine for innovation and efficiency. Competition gives us, the consumers, tons of choices and better products. But on the other hand, that exact same engine can create massive gaps between the rich and poor. It can put profits ahead of what's good for the country or the planet, and it can be pretty unstable with big highs and really painful lows. So, with all the challenges of our current systems, it makes you wonder, what's next? In our last section here, let's explore some different ideas and see how the very meaning of development is changing. This is such a cool way to look at things. It's a total clash of worldviews. A typical modern economist might look at a forest and an oil field and just see their dollar value. But a different philosophy, like Buddhist economics, says, whoa, hold on. It makes this huge distinction between things that grow back and things that don't, arguing that just burning through non-renewable stuff is actually a form of violence. And wow, this quote just sums it all up perfectly. The goal isn't to produce and consume as much as humanly possible. The goal is to get the most happiness and well-being for people while using up the least amount of stuff. That is a radically different way of thinking about progress. And you know what? This new way of thinking is really starting to catch on. Today, when we talk about a country developing, it doesn't just mean its economy is getting bigger. True development is seen as this whole package. You need economic growth, yes, but you also need digital access for everyone. You need to protect the environment, you need to include all parts of society, and you have to provide good healthcare and education. And that really brings us full circle, back to the big final question. We've gone from the tiny family unit all the way to this complex, wired global society. As we keep changing and evolving, the great challenge for all of us is to figure out what's next. What kind of system will finally strike that perfect balance between progress, our own happiness, and the health of this planet we all